You all said you were ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just the audience. They say that the software is the root cause of ableism, but 180 analysis never says that we're going to transform the natural world, which inevitably excludes individuals who are inherently marginalized in the natural environment and the socio-political environment. And 2, rationality DA. Their argument about forgetting trauma through the reconceptualizing of our relationship to plants is intrinsically violent because it forces us to divorce ourselves from our past experiences, divorce ourselves from identities that we value in favor of a more homogenous relationship with nature. This alienates any person who cannot reorient their mindset in the same way that they can. They exclude those without physical disability by not recognizing that they possibly exist, which means that their advocacy cannot solve. It also forces us to forget the social political sphere that disabled individuals are forced to engage in. They tell us that we should forget the historical atrocities that we committed against the disabled women who were locked away for hysteria in order to forget and break apart binaries. We have to recognize how messed up our social political society is before we can break down larger binaries, because otherwise they exclude massive groups of people that break apart, and which breaks apart coalitions needed to embrace their ideology. That's a solvency deficit. And 3, the refusal of these 13 evidence indicates that the only being of nature is equal opens up a gateway to allow us to reconceptualize the disabled body as radically equal. But I've already done the work about how they exclude the mentally disabled, and their over-focus on physicality is bad. They use the term physical transformation, which means 1, they exclude individuals who cannot physically transform, and 2, individuals who physically meet the criteria but cannot endorse their ideology. And 4, they say plants are an open being leveraging them not only against leveraging them against not only the physical body of animals, but also against the disabled body who's never able to fulfill their natural niche in the world of the affirmative. The disabled body does not provide enough utility for the natural world, but are eternally subjugated without explicit problematization of their position within nature, which the affirmative doesn't do. And 5, their advocacy forces us to become things. To embrace the system of becoming is just another link for the work I've done about all these things indicate that even if they win the root cause debate, they'll never be able to resolve the ableism that's intrinsic to their own language and advocacy. And 6, they frame our transformation as human beings as a method of recovery, trying to solve our messed up relationship with nature by pursuing radical recovery surrounding the ways we think. But society's expectations assume that when one recovers, they should reject the mode of living and attempt to fit within society. That's another link. That's wheelchair and dancer 11. I see recovery as a desire to hide hope and keeping one to recover because it allows, because a lot of such things to show is not acceptable. Hiding helps. Well, no one society wants us to recover, to go back to where we were, to move on through, to closing our gaping wounds and not live them. And 7, in cross-sex, they say our identities are a barrier for engaging with the affirmative. I don't accept their apology. This at least indicates that they don't believe we belong in the debate space, which means, or just because we don't get to run a politics at this end, instead we run a feminism critique and an ableism design, which coincide with both my partners' and I's identities. There's no way they believe that disabled women ought to be included, which means that they can't solve for half this room. And analysis of oppression that leave out disability or attempts to cover up the unspeakable disabled body. That's famous in 95. It has become commonplace in notification when racism, sexism, and class bias treatment and discourse that is strange and really unaccountable silence when the issue of disability is stranger more than the point never raise the silence of stranger too, like my image of transgression and deviance of the disabled body is a matter of the passion of discourse of theory, because the discourse is limited by the very predilection of dominating list culture. The body is seen as the scene of access, satisfied and make dominant culture and rigid power leading vision of the body. The test of the body is of the legislative rule of the body and rebellious doctrine really is phallocentric patriarchy. Nightmare of the body is one that is deformed and mutilated, broken, and diseased rather than face the ragged image of the critics, the fluidity of sexuality and the gloss of the reducing the gloss. Story of the body is the text, the inner glossy and the inner text, the glossy is blocked. So labeled, you have the schizophrenic and almost never the body of the differently abled, and identities are relational. We live in the effects of them as understood by others. Anything else ascribed an inherent quality to disability. That's poison 8. The disabled body continues to be a central in its role in a figure. In its role as a figure which shortly the categories of the normal despite its disability, the disabled body is receiving contained the concept category non-disabled body which produces everyday practices of the normal, be unable, disabled, normal, abnormal. We have to move beyond the idea of identity representation as written on our bodies in relationship with another two objects and space of relational space and detail through our bodies live a performance duty that reinscribes the puzzle question matter to embodied identity of the everyday practice. We know live in the essential and essential stereotypes of being women, man, white, black, able-bodied, or disabled. We live our relations to them, and disability is a master trope of human disqualification, other forms of discrimination and all. Skip that card. We're not reading that one. All right. So essentially, they radically tell us that people who are disabled mentally are not involved, or not allowed to be involved in their entire process, which means that there's a massive solvency deficit to any advocacy that they're going to run. They say that we need to reconceptualize our relationship to nature, but we have to first solve the socio-political barriers that force us to not become engaged. With this larger dead white guy critique they have for the status quo. These individuals, Lacan and Nietzsche in particular, don't evaluate people who are disabled, Deleuze and Nietzsche, don't evaluate people who do not conform to their predisposed idea of what a person is or who is able to engage with the state, which means that individuals who are not white and male don't get to have access to their solvency, right? Those individuals don't get to reconceptualize their relationship with nature because they are excluded by the very authors that they are trying to endorse. Instead, you should be looking towards the criticism.
8:15.
Yeah, 8:15 was what
I haven't seen it.
I guess I can see where that was. Yeah, about that. Yeah. That's a new small card. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, they were pretty intersection on people. Yeah, exactly. I know, I'm so excited. You don't even. Somebody does. Yeah. I think it just works.
So I'll keep working for like 30 more seconds.
Yeah. 355?
2.
So the order is going to be the gender critique, then it's going to be case on the ableism arguments, and then there'll be like more of an overview on case proper. Is everyone
Finished with already?
Huh?
So you're gonna finish with already?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish. Yeah, and I'll make it clear where I'm at. All right. Is everyone good? All right. First on the criticism, they say that we can see that we result in the legalization, however, caused by the pollen and two evidence that indicates the relationship to marijuana and post-thinking the plant will drastically change, and we won't be using marijuana for the consumptive practices they talk about. He even indicates how the Greeks recognized that intoxication was not a lifestyle, and that it was a means of being able to change things and change our perspective on things. And this is going to be uniquely key because their evidence is indicating the culture of cannabis where people are smoking marijuana all the time, and the industry that stems from that. However, our advocacy is through thinking like a plant, which would resolve all of that issues. Additionally, they make the argument that they can't think like plants. They try and garnish this as a link to the ableism critique. However, we simply acknowledge their argument and cross-examination where they say we can't. And additionally, there's no actual articulation of why they can't participate in thinking a plant. It talks about the process of forgetting in the context of their relationship to the plant. They make no arguments here. Their only argument is that it links back to sexism on the marijuana debate. However, they don't actually access its link. Additionally, extend the Bell and Russell to the 2K evidence about how focus on humans only is problematic. They try and articulate this as being offensive because how it talks about how we should work towards progress. However, this evidence actually doesn't say that. It just talks about how we need to disrupt social scripts of structure that ultimately exclude the non-human other. And the fact that they find it offensive that we should be including the non-human other, which is what this evidence indicates, is going to be another internal to anthropocentrism, which is the root cause of all the impact scenarios in this debate, and I'll get to that more soon. And additionally, the evidence that makes any subset of epistemology that doesn't include animals is bad, so that's going to be this out of the criticism. Additionally, they say that academia is bad because it allows us to distance to the self. However, the pollen evidence indicates that it's actually not such a bad thing because we can use academia to talk about plants in relation to our identities with plants in the way that we relate to them. This was the pollen evidence, and this was also the Milstein evidence, Milstein 12 evidence from the 1EC. They don't go answered. Additionally, they say personal experience means that they have no ability to relate to plants. However, the Fox and McLean evidence is really good on this question. Humans are always saying that we just can't relate to things because it's not the identities we're used to discussing and talking about, and they can make as many ad hominem complaints about it being a bunch of white men who are writing these evidence that are dead. However, most of these articles come out from the last 2 years, and most of their evidence on this flows from the 90s. Like, don't just allow this generalist argument. Additionally, they say rejecting humanism doesn't solve privilege. However, the Milstein and 12 evidence is really good on this question. They don't answer the fact that Milstein talks about how thinking like a plant is the only way to access talking about other forms of oppression, because in a world where we don't think like a plant, we ultimately allow for dichotomies to continue. They don't talk about how they access dichotomies. They just say the man-woman dichotomy is problematic, and I'll get to that more in a second. Onto their Meller evidence, both of these cards aren't actually that great. The first Meller evidence actually indicates that it is not the only starting point. The line after the one that they highlighted says that gender is not the only starting point, meaning this argument isn't going to make it, which means you're going to cross-apply the Milstein evidence that actually indicates that this is where we should be starting, and cross-apply the Hall and 11 evidence from the 1AC, which also says starting from the perspective of plants is key to breaking down binaries. Their evidence indicates that talking about gender may be a good way to do it, but it doesn't indicate that it will actually solve. Our evidence indicates it's a prerequisite to discussions about gender. Also, you're going to also, they make this anthropocentrism inevitable claim. First, I want to talk about how this is going to be problematic because just that assumption is the entirety of what the 1AC is critiquing. And then additionally, I want to talk about how it doesn't assume thinking like a plant, which is going to ultimately solve. And is this here? No. Okay, and then On the perm debate, extend the permutation and cross-apply the 1AC becoming arguments. This is going to be a reason we can access it because we can talk about multiple perspectives. Their handy evidence all indicates that we should start from an epistemology of the other. This is going to be a diss to their rhetoric because all of their evidence is indicating that we shouldn't be starting from the perspective of plant. However, that's a non-human other. Also, their evidence acknowledges that ecocentrism is at least as old as gender debate. Call for the family evidence. Also, this token in 97, the card it's talking about IR, means that it's not going to solve. They don't actually answer any of the analysis onto the case debate, starting with a quick little overview, and then I'm going to go on stuff. Oh shoot. They've conceded the current thought has been saturated and auto-stabilized. This turn vision of human life is object-oriented. None of their arguments are responsive to how this has created a new notion of modernity that is entirely self-centered and how we need to reverse this egocentric notion to self in order to move our post-ego stage. Only or moving past post-ego stage can ever solve back these ableism claims. And additionally, you're going to extend our evidence on this flow. They make the argument that Googly's 13 evidence isn't actually good. However, it indicates that the root cause of all of the oppressions of disability is because we treat them as non-human. In a world where we treat people as non-human, we get this. They make this rationality to however, extend the thinking like a plan is the only way to reject rationality and break down dichotomies. This is going to be in the app is the only starting point that's going to solve. They also try and make some link arguments about the way that expectations work. However, you're going to look that their alternative on the criticism is going to link into all of these arguments just as hard because it assumes people can simply transcend gender binaries and be able to reevaluate their locus points of evaluation. This is going to mean all their arguments about how people with different mental capacities can't participate still would apply. Additionally, their argument, their Davis and 95 evidence, or actually their argument on 7 about engaging with the affirmative. I just want to point out this was the argument I was making on the K about how they said that they couldn't engage with the affirmative. We weren't making that point.
If 5 something. 52. If 5 52.
Okay. The order is the K and case. I'll cover it pretty much in that order, but there will be cross applications between the two. It was too long for my whole laptop, so I had to cut it in half, so it looks a little wonky on the sides, but I don't care. It's
So
awesome.
it's just one.
Yeah, it was about this long.
I think I prefer it.
I like it that way. It's fun. All right, is everyone good? Okay. First, they've missed the entire point of our link to the 1AC. They talk about how they don't open up new industries for marijuana. Even if that is true, they still try to make us think like a plant, which is exactly what they told us to get a link to in the 2AC. The link to that is that we can't think like a plant because the second that we attempt to do that, we are destroyed within the debate community. The second that we stop fighting for our rights to be in the debate community, for our right to be treated well in the debate community, that's the second that we are destroyed. Me and Mikkel, as disabled women, cannot access the ability to think like a plant, not because we're not able to think like a plant, but rather because the second that we do, we are erased from the debate community and we are put as a footnote to other advocacies. That's exactly what the perm is. Additionally, all of their answers to the 1AR to our links are extremely dismissive, which is another link to the affirmative because they attempt to they attempt to say that the arguments that we make simply aren't good enough to be links. They say that we don't engage the app. This is an example of where they're just not able to conceptualize the way in which these things interact, which is the reason why you should reject the app on face because it assumes our ability to assume the position of a plant, which we do not have the privilege to do. There is no answer to this in the 1AR. They simply say that this doesn't make sense to them. They simply say this doesn't make sense to them. That's not an argument. Don't allow no 2AR extrapolations on this. I don't have a 3NR to answer it. Additionally, we are not allowed, we cannot forget. I've done that word about, okay. They say that we're like, look, you can read academic articles all that you want. We simply ask that you have some sort of personal relationship to the way that you're doing this. The way that you have read the criticism throughout the entirety of the round has not once talked about the debate community and how we view the plant, but rather has talked about how Deleuze and Nietzsche view the plant. Not only are Deleuze and Nietzsche two extremely kind of problematic dudes because they assume personhood means a white cis male who is fairly well off. That is extremely problematic because it excludes it excludes more than half of this room as a reason why the app doesn't actually work for most people, and it's a critical solvency deficit that is not answered in the 1AR. Additionally, they tell that thinking like a plant can solve binaries. However, I've done the work above about how we actually can't think like plants because we're not allowed to by the superstructures of normative debate. Additionally, they say that the Miller card is bad. However, these cards do talk about how gender is important and how you have to resolve gender inequality and discrepancies in order to be able to solve any kind of anthropocentric criticism. And this essentially means that if there's some world in which you vote athletes on the perm, but they have dropped a lot of things on the perm, I'll go to that now. First, they conceded that it's footnoting that they simply add us onto an existing theoretical framework. Yes, the Tickner card is talking about IR. However, it is still applicable in this case because it is still them trying to steal our advocacy and say like, oh yeah, I guess women are kind of sort of important. Like we should maybe think about that. They don't actually mention that at all in the 1AC, which is the reason why they are simply adding us onto an existing framework that will never be able to solve because the epistemology of the 1AC that is rendered through the lens of people like Deleuze and Guattari and Nietzsche is extremely problematic, especially for people like me and Mikkel who are disabled women. For example, I can't remember whether it was Deleuze or Guattari, but they ran an insane asylum and essentially confined individuals who were not normative, who did not have neurological problems they essentially excluded them from the community. This is exactly what the 1AC attempts to do to us in the debate community. Additionally, I can read off a list of reasons why Nietzsche was bad. However, he does the exact same thing, which is why the Simpson 95 card is so problematic for the 1AC because it talks about how how binaries is exactly what Nietzsche created when he talks about forgetting, because he calls it the splendid blonde beast, the people who create society's laws. This is what the 1AC attempts to do. Additionally, on the permutation, they've conceded that they are stealing our identity as an attempt for them to take our identity away from us and make it their own. This is problematic. It's never addressed in the 1AR. Don't allow them to our answers. This is problematic because it assumes that everyone can speak for everyone else and that there is no difference between different identities. This is problematic because it leads to essentially the whitewashing of all experience, all gender and race and ableist experience in the debate community, which is not something they never grapple with. The permutation is the only alt is the only thing that will be able to resolve this, because it does not call for us to radically shift who we are as people, but rather calls for us to interrogate the ways in which we understand what good debate is. This is not precluded by the arguments on case, which I'm going to now. First, even if they win a root cause argument, they have conceded the immediacy of the criticism. They've conceded the immediacy of the criticism, which means that you have to vote for us because we come first. It is a prior question to be able to solve things. Don't allow us to our answers. Also, they've conceded the solvency deficit that we have to start with humans first. This is a conceded solvency deficit out of the 1AR. It's a reason why you should not vote for the affirmative. Additionally, they have conceded. They say the alt links because it assumes people can transcend the alt. Doesn't assume that we can transcend our identity. Rather, assumes that people cannot be horrible to us in the debate community. And to say that means we have to transcend our own abilities, transcend our own identities is extremely offensive. Additionally, they've conceded that becoming won't solve for the language of the 1AC, but they say we need to envision things. We need to envision things. For example, let us say link to the ableist discourse, that they have not answered. Additionally, they concede the wheelchair dancer 11 argument, which talks about recovery. They talk about becoming as a way to overcome our problems. It's not a question of overcoming them, because sometimes disability is part of what makes me who I am, and trying to overcome that is extremely problematic because it erases my ability. It erases my ability to essentially relate to myself, which is extremely problematic because it creates a aesthetic hatred of the self, which is extremely problematic and probably something that even their authors would agree is bad. Yeah. Even if they win the answer was extremely important, which they probably will, you have to vote on the immediacy arguments because their ability to actually negotiate this within the debate community is so far lacking. Don't allow new 2AR answers to come up here and talk about the debate space. They haven't done that so far, which means they exclude at least half the room. It's a critical solvency deficit to the affirmative. Do you want me to put this up here?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
It's all right.
That's okay though. Yeah. Because it's like intersection.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
and that
yeah.
gives us a lot of leverage against a lot of things.
We're all waiting for him? Oh, sorry. I was meeting here and leaving. Take it, or you can read it, or whatever.
Okay, you can just take it. So which one are you did yours for?
Alright, order's gonna be the K and then the F. Alright. Is anybody not ready? Okay.
First, their response to our argument about how there's no articulation why they can't think like a plane is only that once they stop advocating for their inclusion in the debate space, so they excluded. But at the point in the cross-section where they can see that the perpetuation of sexism is inevitable, they're always going to have to fight for their place in the debate. On that doesn't, and they can see that the potential is not unique. We're both going to have to be able to come to terms with this discussion together, because at the point where both of these things are always going to be happening, we're going to have to be able to meet with a discussion how to best solve both of them, because these are both mathematical questions of how we interact with one another that need to be solved. They say that they don't have the privilege to think about it, but our Fox and McLean evidence indicates that those are the exact kind of binaries that humans create when they don't evaluate nature for long enough. They don't answer this evidence. They just say that there's no answer to we don't answer that they don't have the privilege, and that we haven't talked about it, but they don't concede the Fox and McLean evidence that non-humans say it would be offensive to include non-human animals in the moral consideration, and that's problematic. That was the argument that Chris was talking about in the 1AR, that human only approach would be bad. They don't answer this argument. I'll get to that more later on the flow. They also can see the arguments that academia is good. That was the pollen evidence, that we can use academic spaces in order to have these discussions. They say that we don't ever talk about our relationship to debate, but our Bell and Russell 2K evidence is exactly talking about how we need to realize our relationship with people in academic critical pedagogy and academic context like debate. We need to understand our relationship to those people and realize how reliant we are on them in order to evaluate the role that other people play and empowerment plays in our lives. But the power that we get from other people. They also say that they don't ever answer the Milstein evidence that talks about thinking like a plant being key to maintain making visible invisible forms of oppression visible that they were formerly invisible. This means that their claims about ableism being masked can only be solved from thinking like a plant, as they have indicated it continues to be pushed out of the discussion, and that's because they're viewed as less than the less than human other. This was another argument Chris was talking about. Able's people that are differently able to see a less than human animal, and that is what our pollen evidence says can be handled by forgetting our relationship to the plant and animal as in our relationship to the non-human animal or to the animal, and being able to break down these kinds of relationships where we can actually evaluate how we relate to other beings. They also conceded that a human-only approach would be bad. That was the Fox and McLean evidence. They say we don't get any new answers to this, but it's not new. It was in the 1AR, it was in the 2AC also, and it's not. But it's also critical. It's the critical starting point. That nature is a critical starting point. That means that you can resolve the permutation question here. That humans are the ones who have created nature binaries, and thus starting with humans and human relationships will only perpetuate those binaries and recreate more in the future. There are argument for not being able to link to the plant, things like a plant is the power to advocate within the debate space to be eliminated, and that was answered by the Fox and McLean evidence on questioning binaries, and the fact that plants are the ultimate mode of being, and that they never cease to be a closed being. That means they're always open to new forms of becoming, which means that it's never a process that is finished. So when they say things like becoming can't solve, that's literally impossible, because becoming is an infinite process whereby we continually reassess our evaluation with different things, and to be able to identify how those things interact with us and help us fulfill our everyday lives. They also keep harping on this old dead guys question, how you shouldn't probably believe a lot of the evidence that's in the 1AC. You can focus on the case flow. That's where I had it. The old dead white guys arguments. But these old dead white guys arguments have been over extrapolated by the 2NR. One, they were originally just ad hominem attacks against the intelligibility of our claims. Stick them with that. In that case, you don't reject them on face, because the affirmative is about thinking like plants, and the authors don't happen to use Nietzschean and delusion theory to get there. And B2 becoming resolves the conflict with criticism of the app. This will be one more reason that it's not a relevant argument. The loose notion that becoming is about creating and forming new relationships to other beings. This is crucial in a world where our relationships are flawed. 3, they say the mental asylum work was done by Guattari. However, they were actually working as a psychologist's office with Lacan in the short term, when they wrote a book about how messed up it was. Check out Anti-Oedipus. And 4, their arguments about Nietzsche or false Nietzsche. Believe the notion for getting allowed us to get beyond trivial arguments or formal problems in order to discuss issues related to the plan. In particular, the Pollen 2 evidence is a good indicator that the world is not static. Personal standpoint is the easiest way to lose relation to nature. Basically, this idea of static personal relation is problematic, because it's the only way that it has in the past allowed us to move away from evaluating our relationship to nature. They say that starting with humans would be bad, and that becoming doesn't solve, but these are all been answered back, but the becoming is recreating new modes of being with other living species, and by thinking of plants, we are able to create a new mode of being that forgets the other forms of oppression that currently were used when relating to plants, and the kind of attitude that the negative talks about. Also, they're losing on the root cause argument, that which is going to be an easy spot for you to vote here. They conceded that the stabilization of human life has been only object-oriented. That means that none of their arguments respond to how modernity has been created around a human-centered notion of egocentrism, and by using the plant, it's the only way to move post-ego to a stage where we can actually neutrally evaluate all-embracing moral standard. They don't ever answer this. It talks about how plants are literally created with no binaries, just one fold that acts like it could be, but instead, since listed as a fold and not actually an open space within the plant. It has no its center and no ego, and that's key to being able to evaluate relationships.
Hey, let me wait now. Thank you. I hope your computer
Thanks. Yeah.
does its thing longer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it still works. It like shit itself at Weber last year, and I couldn't even get it to turn on for like 8 months, and then like 2 weeks ago it started working again. So we will see.
I don't know what to call the app. What would you all, I'm filling out a round report. What would y'all like me to call your affirmative?
Yeah.
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 Who's Jake and
Jake was the 2A.
Hannah?
That's it.
I remember what my username is. So.
Andrew Burnett, maybe? Yeah.
So I voted for the negative. I think the negative wins two important arguments. One, that the plans focus on or thinking like a plan is not accessible for disabled women of color, and that is not perhaps desirable as a strategy. And secondly, that even if you win your root cause arguments, which they even admit that you likely will, that there's an immediacy to their arguments that require a focus on gender. And that's kind of compounded with, you don't really talk about what's going on in the debate community or what the relationship to thinking like a plant would have to the current situation of what it means to be a disabled woman debater in this community in this time. And so in that respect, there's a reason to vote for them and for their alternative, even if it doesn't perhaps address anthro, because gender is a more important concern. It's more relevant perhaps to the debaters in this room, and it's more accessible to the debaters in this room. Importantly, I think there are arguments about why the affirmative's reliance on Nietzsche and Deleuze, dead white authors talking about plants, and about why all of that is, the reason why you put that at the forefront is because it's more accessible to you in particular, not accessible to them, not necessarily a way for them to be safe in this space, is also somewhat of a problem for the act.
I have a couple questions, just a little bit unrelated. When I run this particular case, in this year against critical race apps, I'm really tentative to do that because as a white female, I feel like I have to be really careful in those debates. Do you have any suggestions as to how I should go about that? Because I feel awkward talking
what is
about
the argument?
the
The gender, well, it seems like somewhat of the, your discussion of the people of color, women of color, kind of might get bracketed in that debate or neutralized in that debate, which kind of brings the gender and disabled or ableism questions to the forefront. You would need to find a way of talking about all of them, perhaps that is better than talking about any one of them singularly.
Okay.
So it's something that gender adds to the discussion. It's something that ableism adds to the discussion that you can do in the debate round. That is a reason to vote for you that could be superior to the other team.
Okay.
That is more to do with what is happening than who is who, right? So it's not about who's white or black or female or disabled, but who is bringing up those issues and talking about them in the best possible way, or in the most effective way. And so, particularly, I tend to think that maybe the language of ableism and what it means to be enabled or disabled by certain discourses and certain laws or policies might be a better discursive lens to kind of talk about gender and race through the language of how one can be disabled by their gender, disabled by their race, disabled by how they might appear to the outside world. And so it's a way of accessing the discussion without excluding the other side. So it's to say that when we talk about ableism and we talk about the disabled by the law or by discourse, we are also talking about what we're talking about blackness, we're talking about gender, we're talking about queer, because those are all ways in which individuals become disabled.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really helpful.
Any other thoughts or questions? I wrote out a ballot too. It's pretty much what I just said, and it includes the link to the rebuttals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When it comes to the root cause debate, how do you think we could better handle it? Because that becomes something that they were winning, right? Do you think like the direction that we took was?
I don't think we really tried to make an argument for why gender was the root cause.
Yeah,
I think that their kind of argument about the separation from nature, that original binary as kind of being foundational, kind of, just rings true in this debate. But I think your argument about the immediacy of your concerns, perhaps the proximity, it's not the root cause, but the proximate cause, which is to say that even if it started with our relationship with nature, we've gotten so far beyond that we can't just focus on nature. We just can't be like, let's think like a plant, right? I have to, in order for me to think, I can't think like a plant and exclude my womanness or my ableness or disabledness or all the other things about me to assume this plant identity, right? Like that's kind of what you're saying. How do I fucking forget who I am and how I'm positioned in this world, right? Like I can't just vacate myself to become a plant, because when I do that, I get steamrolled. So in that respect, it's just to say that root cause doesn't matter, and I'm not certain why it does. For y'all, similarly, and I put this in the comments, is that if y'all would focus on why starting with plants allows for you to resolve the gender question, that would have been more effective. It's a flipping of the root cause. Who cares how we got here? The question is, how do we get out? And so starting with the reorientation of our relationship with nature, you have to say is foundational, because if you just focus on human relations or you just focus on gender, then you reify the foundational binary that still allows for that to occur. And the way in which that plays out in this debate is that they can't conceptualize the harm to plants. They talk about everyone and every ism and everything that exists except animals and plants, non-human beings, right? Disabled people, women, people of color, women of color, transgender, you name it, they are sympathetic to it, but not fucking plants, right? And from their mentality, they might think that, disabled people are treated like that, right? But that's just to say that you have to, bring plants within to the fold, bring animals within to the fold. And what that does is that it might perhaps shatter all of our conceptions about what it means to be a human, which then includes gender, ableism, race, all of that.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Good luck with the rest of your day.
Thank you.